So we're back to our mimer that we're learning in Likuti Torah. Beautiful mimer about Shma Yisroel. Shma Yisroel, as we said, is the motto, the mission statement, the slogan of Judaism. A Jew is supposed to say it right before the moment he dies. We're supposed to say it twice a day at least. You're supposed to say it in addition to that right before you go to sleep. It's what should be on our mind all the time and in our hearts all the time. And that's exactly what it says. Listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one, and you will love God. And we said the people of the, after the first temple was destroyed, so they inserted between Echad and V'ahavta, which is, that's the way it appears in the Torah, they inserted Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam Bo'ed. But the goal of the whole thing is to come to love God. That's what it says. Listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one. And the Rebbe explained how we can come to this love and why it is that now in our generation that very few people actually do come to this loving God. Right. So the Rebbe explained to us, I'm just making a bit of a summary of what we've learned up to now. The Rebbe said that, first of all, in order to really love God, you have to really use your mind and start to feel how real God is. In order to do that, you have to you have to put everything in the proper perspective. What to us now is reality? What is the world? What's real? The world is real. I have a house. I have money. I have my possessions, my shoes. I have my name. I look in the mirror. I see somebody. People address me. People call me up on the phone. I know who I am, right? I have a mother and a father and a birthplace, and you can fill out details on your passport and applications. So you know pretty much who you are. Says the Rebbe, that's reality, right? Okay, it's reality, but it's not real reality. It's not really real reality. Real reality is the reality that's creating you. In order to feel this real reality, is you have to understand that you're just a creation. In fact, the whole universe is a creation. And it's being created every moment, every second. In fact, time itself is being created. So you are being created. In other words, you want to come to love God, you have to understand that God is infinitely more real and valuable than you yourself are. Think about how much you love yourself. A person loves himself usually unlimited, right? Unlimited. If things don't go the way I want, as I become all depressed, and if things don't go the way my next door neighbor wants or somebody else, so I can empathize with them, but I don't feel so bad. That person feels himself. That's reality, right? My next door neighbor is not as real to me as I am to me because he's not as close to me. Well, God is creating me, so he's infinitely more real. So we have to get this idea out of our mind that God is a creation, God is a thing, and I'm a thing. And God, a long time ago, he created me, but I'm really real. And what about God? I guess, back then he was really real, but not anymore. No, yeah, if you want to come to love God, then the only way to do it is to think that this whole world, this whole real world is only a creation, and that the creator is infinitely more real and true than the world is. So it's not that the world doesn't exist. The world doesn't exist. It does certainly exist. Yes, no doubt about it. And there are people, and it's not a figment of our imagination, and it's not, all subjective or whatever. Of course, the mind plays a very big part in it, especially how we interpret the world. But the world really exists. Says the word. I mean, that's the whole point here. We're going to learn how to interpret the world properly. It's a creation. It's a creation. That doesn't minimize the difficulties of the world. We see that King David King David certainly knew what God was. He certainly had a feeling of God, and the world was certainly a creation. He felt that, right? And nevertheless, he had a lot of troubles. The whole book of Psalms It's just troubles that people gave him. But the thing was is that when he did have these troubles, number one, they weren't imaginary troubles. Like I heard someone say, a 90-year-old person, he said, listen, in my life, I've had a lot of troubles, a lot of difficulties. And I have to say that 99% of them were imaginary. In other words, a lot of times people take things in the wrong way, or they imagine that somebody's after them, or that the world is against them, or something like that, or that they're worth nothing. And that's what makes the troubles for them. So we have to understand that no, that this world is a creation, and I am really here, but I am being created. And the creator is infinitely more real than me. Where do we get that from Shma Yisroel? Shem Ayin, we said, that the whole world just comes from what's called the name or the letters of God. And that's the Shem, and the Ayin is the 70 emotions. That name of God that creates the world, that comes from the emotions of God. That's also not the essence of God. That's what the world is, but that's only the external part of me. But the Jewish part of me, the fact that I'm a Jew, that's connected to the essence of God. And that's what it means, Shma. Shma means that the world is just a creation. Yisroel, the Jewish people, they rose up in God's thought. They don't come from God's speech. The Jewish part of me, the fact that I'm a Jew, that's what it means. The Jews are the sons of God. It explains it in the Tanya, the 2nd chapter. All the Jews are called the sons of God. That's what it means to be a son of God. It says, when you think about this, you come to a tremendous level of love. That there's also Hashem is Elokeinu, that the whole world comes from Yud Kei Vav Kei, and etc. And says the Rebbe, that's all was good when the temple was here. But as soon as the temple started, but after the destruction of the temple, now we can't reach this level of love. Now we have to have Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Avad. That's why the rabbis put this 6-word statement between Shema Yisrael and Ve'avta, between thinking and loving. You have to have this Baruch Shem, which that's the thing of Kabbalat Ol. Remember we said Kabbalat Ol? Kabbalat Ol means basically that when all these thoughts don't work, and all this, and you're thinking about God and it just doesn't arouse you, you just feel yourself. So what do you have to have? Kabbalat Ol, accepting the yoke. We talked about this last time. You have to stop thinking. All the thoughts aren't going to help you. You have to have just this feeling that I just am a servant, right? Forget this thing about the Son of God. It's not going to waken me up. I mean, it's good to read about it in the Tanya and explain it, but it doesn't affect my emotions. What do you have to do? Sort of, you want to come to love God? Forget your emotions. Forget all these thoughts. Just serve God like a servant. No thinking, like an ox. Like an ox is connected to, you just do what you say. But the only problem is that you have to put the yoke on yourself, on the yah. So you do have to think. So this is very difficult for a person to think and to use his mind and to completely surrender himself to God all the time. Never to get angry. Why? Because God doesn't want me to get angry. I don't feel God. I feel myself. I want to get angry, but I don't, because God says you shouldn't get angry. Not even for really good reasons. To have lust, to run after something. Oh, I really like that. Does God want you to do it? No, but I want to, I want to, Kamalat Ol. You have to be like an ox. What's an ox? What is it? I want to live like an ox. That's my life is going to be like an ox. What do you want your life to be? You want it to be like Napoleon, or like, the Nebuchadnezzar. He had everything he wanted, all the pleasures in the world. And what did he get in the end? He died. The same worms eat up Nebuchadnezzar's that eat up an ox. It's not special worms for special people, right? So when you die, in the end, it's better that at least you did something eternal in your life instead of just being selfish. Right? When you're selfish, you live for yourself. So a person dies, that self is gone. It's up in the air. It's like writing a whole thesis in the sand. All of a sudden the water comes, washes the whole thing away. Why? You do something eternal. Is that eternal thing? That's eternal, right? And even if you don't believe in going to heaven, at least you did something that was right. You did something that was true, right? Instead of just killing people and doing. You lived for the truth. You lived according to your conscience. So it says that's Kabbalat Ol. That's what is Kabbalat Ol. You have to be like an ox. That explains why so many people can love God. Because first of all, it's very difficult to get emotional about God nowadays. And in some ways, it's even more difficult to have Kabbalah all just to say you're nothing. Nowadays, they have all these programs and seminars and things, how to be the real you, how to, to succeed and how to succeed and be successful and to be, you'll really be famous and be popular and be rich and be, pleasure and how to get all your pleasures and how to get your things. And that's like really successful life. Who are you? What type of pleasures do you have? They're teaching the kids in school, what is your orientation in order to get pleasure? Who are you? Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. And the fact of the matter is that that's the spirit of the times. It's the spirit of the times since the temple was destroyed. That's what they call it, ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So to all of a sudden throw away this whole thing and say, I'm just going to be like an ox attached to God, I'm going to do what God wants without any thinking, that's against the spirit of the time, but that's what's required. Reb Mendel Futterfest, one of my teachers, he told me that in the yeshiva where he learned, he said there were boys that were what's called maskilim. They had tremendous minds. They could learn, they could understand, they could ask questions, they could compare one idea to another idea, something they learned in Chassidut to another place where they learned in Chassidut. Here it says this, there's another place that says the opposite. How can I rectify this? And also in Talmud, they would learn the Talmud. There were tremendous memories they could learn. Then there were other boys that they were more emotional. They had tremendous love for God. They could sit and pray, just say Shma Yisroel, just think about what that is and sing Nigunim and just be tremendously emotional, rapture of love for God. They were called Ovdim. And then he said there were the Batlanim. The Batlanim, they were the people that they didn't have such good minds. I mean, they weren't, they were, let's say C average, whatever the average IQ is. And as far as the emotions, also, they could get emotional about God maybe for a couple seconds every week or something. But they were Batlanim. They were just, they had what's called Kabbalah Tol. Whatever you told them to do, they would do. So whenever there was really difficult times, says these people, the ones who were called the Batlanim, the ones who weren't worth anything, they were the ones that saved the situation. They ran and they brought food and they saved people and they helped. The Reb Mendel Futterfest said, I was one of the Batlanim. He said, I was one of the, what he's got, the worthless ones. That's what it means. You make yourself worthless. Then how do you do that? It's, number one, you have to eskafia sitrach. You have to knock down all of your selfishness. Whatever you want to do, if it's against the Torah, you force yourself not to do it. Whatever you don't want to do, if it's something that according to the Torah you should do, you force yourself to do it. You don't want to put on tefillin. I don't want to put on tefillin. I don't like it. But God says you should do it. Okay, I'll do it. So he does it at the end of the day, whatever, but he forces himself. He forces himself. Then someone says, listen, you shouldn't put tefillin on at the end of the day. You should put it on in the morning. Okay. So he forces himself. He forces himself to do what he's supposed to do. Says that's what it says. That's the whole idea of a neder, of taking vows. There's a thing in Israel that says nowadays you're not supposed to do it, but it says you take a vow. We'll talk about that in a second. It says that taking a vow, you go against your will. It says neder ihu le'ela ve'inun chaya. It says it's the neder. What is that neder? A person knows what's right, but he doesn't want to do it. He knows what's wrong, but he does want to do it. Right? That. So what do? You make a neder. Nowadays, you don't make neders. We're going to talk about that in a second. What does a neder do? A neder means he has one moment of clarity. Suddenly he realizes himself, listen, I shouldn't eat not kosher food. Oh, but I really like it. I really enjoy it. But I can't do it. Okay, I'll stop. And he can't stop. Right? Every time he passes by that restaurant, he just has to go in and buy whatever it is, God forbid, a shrimp. He has to do it. He thinks about it all the time. And as soon as he eats that shrimp, he just feels so good, and so calm. So what? But he says, no, I can't do it. What am I going to do? So he makes a vow. right? He realizes this is a wrong thing to do. I must not do it anymore. I'm out of control. He makes a vow. I swear I will never eat a shrimp again. Next time he passes by the restaurant, okay, you know what? I'll this is going to be the last time. So no, all of a sudden he hears that vow. He says, the vow, I made a vow to God. I'm not going to do it. Well, what am I going to do now? Big deal. But no, he heard that vow. He remembers that vow came from a moment of clarity. Now I want to eat that shrimp because I'm confused. The vow makes him clear. So the vow makes him go against his will. He has to force himself. Come on, let me have a good time. Right? Ten lechayot lechiot. Let me do what I want. He says, no. I can't do that. I can't. This is the real me is talking to the not real me. This is also in the regular world, but people are addicted to all sorts of stuff. Also the same way, the other way around. It's a big commandment to give charity, but I don't want to give charity. Let the bums, let them work. Let them work on their own. I worked hard for them. No, you have to give charity. But I don't want to give charity. No, what are you going to do? So every time a person sticks out his hand, I find a million reasons not to give him. But you're supposed to give charity. Give something. You have to give charity. So he makes a vow. I swear the next time that someone comes. So a vow forces you to do what you're supposed to. Especially a vow is from turning from bad. That's number one. In other words, not doing what I want. I want to be lazy. I'm not going to do it. But kayom, now, we say beli neder. Now, if you say, right, I'm not going to eat that shrimp anymore, you should say beli neder, without a vow. Because it's a very severe thing to go against a vow. And personality, our drives and our urges are very strong. And sometimes nowadays, the urge to do something is much more meaningful than the vow that we take. So I made a vow to God, big deal. I want to live my life. Let me live my life. Let me eat this not kosher food. So nowadays we have to say below neder without a vow. What's the main thing now is ha'aseh tov, to do good. Now is the thing is to force yourself to do more good. That the one time that it says in the Tanya it brings that it used to be the custom back in the time of the Talmud. I mean, nothing was written down, basically. They didn't have any books. So everything was written down by hand, by script, whatever. So especially before the Talmud was written, like Rabbi Yehuda Anasi got a special permission from above that he could write down the Mishnah, and so it also was later on Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Ushia. They wrote the Talmud Bavli and the Rishalmi, the Bavli. So they got a special, but before that, it wasn't written down. So everybody had to learn very clearly. That was what the Jews did. They went over their material 100 times. You would go over a thing 100 times. That was a standard thing until it was ingrained in you. It says, but there were some people that they went over 101 times. That one time, which is more than average, chashuv mimea is considered like 100 times. It says over there that it brings the example from the Gemara that if you take a donkey to go 10 miles, you have to pay $10. If you take the donkey, you rent out a donkey to go 11 miles, then it costs $20. So I thought, 1 second, it was $1 a mile, right? 10 miles is $10. So one more mile should be $1 more. Says, no. The donkey is used to going 10 miles. That's what he's used to doing. Or the donkey with the driver together. Anyway, that's what they do, 10 miles. That's it. You want it to go out of the normal. Well, you have to pay out of the normal then. You have to pay twice as much. It's twice as hard for them to go that extra mile. This is the same thing with us. To go a little bit out of our habit, what we think is our ability, just to go a little bit outside, as that's worth all of the effort from before. And it's understood that if you go a little bit outside and you do that regularly, 11, so 11 becomes normal. And now you'll have to do one more. But Cain also, but stuck with charity. That a person that he gives a little bit more than he wants, right? Usually every day he gives like 10 cents. So he gives a quarter. Now you start getting used to a quarter. So you give 50 cents. No big deal. Now you know what you used to give to the poor people 50, give $1. $1. Oh, I got to give $1. So you know what? Give 60 cents. Give a little bit more, but give more. No, $50 is enough. These bums, they don't deserve. Don't think that way. You have to give. I'll do a little instead of doing what you're normal at and patting yourself on the back. Go a little bit outside. Says, listen, at least I'm turning from bad. I'm not doing any bad things. Leave me alone. Says the Rebbe, that's not the thing nowadays. Now the thing is, do more good. And do more good. The one little bit that you do more than your nature, than your habit, chashuv biyoter, is more valuable, mina regilus, than all that you did according to your nature. Of course, it's built on what you did. That's today, this is the idea of accepting the yoke of heaven. By means of this, we can come to ahava, love. As soon as you really put yourself aside and you really do it in action, you take it out of thought. In the earlier generations, they could think about God, but now we just have to do it. How do you say by through action? Action speaks louder than words into thoughts, etc. By means of actually turning from bad, forcing ourselves, and to forcing ourselves to do good, to do what God wants, in other words, is that opens up the door to love God. Because you're not thinking about yourself. You're not paying so much attention to your own urges and your own existence. All of a sudden you can start to feel, wow, maybe it's really true. I'm just a creation. Then you can come to love of God, what's called loving God b'kol miodech, with all of your being. That's what it says in the Torah. Shma Yisroel, listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one. You should love God with all of your heart, with all of your might, and all of your being. Me'odecha, the word ma'od also means very much. Ma'od means ma'od, very, very much. In other words, unlimited. How much is very much? Whatever you put down, that it has to be more. Ki hine kasiv, it says, or zerul tzaddik, it says, there is a light which is planted for the tzaddik. V'ziratea le li ba'oretz, and it's planted in the ground. What does that mean? The ground, we said, is humility. And when a person does good deeds from humility, so that plants a seed in the ground. And that what grows up from that is love, appreciation for God. Right? Just the same thing as, what does a seed do? You plant a little seed in the ground. The seed doesn't look like anything. And suddenly it grows up. All of a sudden it's a beautiful apple tree with flowers, with fruits, with this, with shade, with color, fragrance. You never would dream it. The same thing by means of simple deeds is by means of this can grow up this amazing, intimate reality, connection with God. That's what it means. This is a general principle. Shalo yochol ishtanos miyesh liyesh acher elo bebitul mehuso kamashal azuriya. And this is a general principle. If you want to change from one identity to another, you want to be a normal, regular person. But on the other hand, you have a godly soul that says, no, hey, you're a Jew. Now you want to start acting like a Jew. What is a Jew? A Jew is a person that loves God. That's what a Jew is. A Jew is a person that has a love for God, a hidden love for God, a revealed love for God. But a Jew is a person that he loves God. That's the godly soul. How do you come to love God instead of loving yourself? How? So it says it's like a seed. You want a seed is a very beautiful thing. You ever look at just a seed, right? An apple seed. Take an apple seed out of an apple. You eat an apple, there's little seeds inside of it, right? Look at it in just a magnifying glass. Oh, it's beautiful. It's so complete and hard and shiny. It's very nice, a seed. So you put it into the ground and it grows up into a tree. A tree is a lot nicer. And not only that, a tree has a lot of seeds. What's the step in between? The step in between is the seed rots. It rots in the ground. Like they say that there's a story and that the two brothers, they came from the city, big city. They heard that bread does not come from the grocery store. They thought bread comes from the grocery store. So no, there's something before that. It grows from the field. There's wheat grows in the field. And it comes from the, I says, well, let's go and see. I don't know what does this mean? They had no idea what it meant. So they went to the field and they saw that there's a farmer, and a farmer comes out and they figure, how is he going to do it? What does it mean? It comes from the field. They didn't know what it meant. They see a farmer coming out. There's this beautiful field. He's got a beautiful field. And he takes a couple of horses, attaches them to a plow, and he starts to wreck the whole field. The field was beautiful. You could play soccer on it. You could do things like they do in the city. You play, make a big park. Nobody plows in the city. They'd never heard of such a thing. He's plowing the whole thing up. One brother says to the other one, let's get out of here. Maybe he's going to plow us up. The guy's not normal. So let's have a little patience. Let's wait and see what happens. Plows up the whole field. And then afterwards, he comes out with a big, huge basket of grain. They say, oh, look at that, it's grain. Wow. He says, yeah, that's wheat. He says, he's probably going to grind it up and make bread. That's where he comes. He says, no. He goes in the field and he starts throwing the wheat on the ground. He says, the man is mad. He's got this perfect wheat that he can make bread out of it. And he's just throwing it into the ground, enough that he wrecked the ground. Now he's wrecking the wheat also. And he covers the whole thing over. And the other brother says, listen, let's go back to the town and we'll come back a while. Let's come back every day and see. Sure enough, they come back like when it was a month later and they see it's beautiful. Just beautiful. They could almost cry. Here's this beautiful field that was flat, and now it's just this grain as far as they can see, the wheat, stalks of wheat waving in the wind. Just so beautiful, fantastic. All of a sudden comes out the farmer and he starts cutting the whole thing down. He comes with a plow. One of the brothers says, wow, this man, I see, really is insane. Let's get out of here. And they both run away. Right? And still, it's going to cut us down also. In other words, the whole entire process is just taking one thing that's whole and then wrecking it in order to come to a higher level. Says the Rebbe, that's the same thing. He just takes the first thing, the seed. That's the most dramatic. He takes a perfect seed, puts it in the ground, and the seed gets completely wrecked. That's the same thing with ourselves. If we want to really grow, as it says, that's a general principle. Klal Gadol. This is a general principle. You cannot change from one yesh, from one identity to another. Ela bebitul mahuto. You have to somehow or other negate yourself. Kamashal azariya shezorim garin echad, like they plant one seed as enot somech, and it doesn't grow ad shenirkav, until the seed rots. Shenirkav, when the seed rots and it becomes destroyed, then somchim himenu kama shibulim, then there grows from it many stalks. Kahu mamish. So it is also benimshal. So it is also in the lesson we want to learn from this this idea. We have the idea of a seed rotting, and that's supposed to be teach us a lesson about how to change ourselves. When a person changes his will, and he forces the sitra achra, and he forces his feeling of selfishness to not do bad until he has to do good. He forced himself, so he wrecks his whole personality. Right? He used to be a race car driver, something, and all of a sudden he decides, right? And he was a wild man, and now all of a sudden he decides, no, I'm going to serve God. Azai, then, so he has to negate himself first. Then yochel avol b'chinas ahava. Then you can come to love with all of your might. B'chinas ahava gadola, tremendous love. She'ena yochol litkabel, that cannot be accepted in any vessel. Sheb'chinas b'kol nafshecha. The level of serving God, we said, with all of your heart and all of your soul. This is two levels of love. but these are levels of love that can be accepted in your brain. You understand? Like we said, Hihu chayecha. He says you have to understand that God is our life, right? We're not living from ourselves. So either we can say, yes, I am living for myself and I don't need God. That's right? Which that's an atheistic way of view of life, which is also, it's also an option. Certainly definitely is an option. And this, or you can think maybe I'm being created by God. If you think I'm being created by God, so you think, well, God must be pretty good. He must be pretty real. He says, that thinking like that brings you to love God with all of your heart and with all of your soul. Then you can put it into a vessel. This third level of loving God with all of your might, with all of your everything. Ma'od means very much. Loya b'shum kli. This cannot be put into any personality. Ella, but hakli shalo, the only vessel is malchut peh, Torah shabal peh, learning the Torah. Korean law. V'nikra mitzvahs hamelech. That's called the king, the commandment of the king. In other words, going after what the oral Torah says. Right? To go after to say God gave the Bible, and here we got it, but that's we can understand that. I mean, listen, it's a very hard thing to really deny. I mean, it certainly is possible to deny it, that God gave the Torah. Certainly is possible to deny that somebody made it up. But if you think about it a little bit, it's pretty difficult, to deny it. I mean, really, you want to say the Jews are like the most stupid nation in the world, and they've been passing down this like ridiculous, just fairy tale story, and believing it. And there's big rabbis that they're intelligent people, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and there's others that they were also geniuses in science and math, and the wonderful people, and suddenly stuck in this whole genius of theirs and their abilities is this crazy thing that they believe in the Torah. And not only that they believe in the Torah, they really believe the story that God took the Jews out of Egypt and he gave them on Mount Sinai, talked to all these 3 million people. I mean, come on, you really believe that? This is not only do I believe it, Jews have been believing this for the last 3,300 years. They've been passing it down to their children, that's the way it's been. And you want to say that you believe this story, right? You believe the story. So, it's pretty hard not to believe it, that it happened. But you can do like, what the Christians did, what the Muslims did with it. They say, yeah, but, you have to know how to interpret it properly. And the Muslims say it got lost and something like that. Okay. Nevertheless, if you do think about this, so you can come to loving God, right? If you really think, forget about this. Listen, God gave the Torah, the same Torah we have now. God is enlivening me. You start to think about it, right? You start to think about it so you can come to loving God, right? But to actually sit down and really learn the Torah and to do it with that love of God that you had, to actually do things, and not only that, in such great detail, to express this love in such small detail, is that's showing true love. Asur mutar, tameh v'tor, kosher v'pasul. That's the whole thing of the. It's like if a person, let's say he has God forbid, he has his parents, his wife, his children, whatever, and they're sick. God forbid. And he says, give me, I want a cup of coffee, not a cup of coffee like this. And they have all these orders and all these things to do right now. If you really do all the details, what they want, that's a sign of real true love. And that you really care. Right? It could be that you'll hire somebody to do it, but you really want all of their needs to be taken care of. Right? If you're going to get something out of it, right? You're going to inherit your father or something. So that's not true love. True love is you're not going to get anything out of it. And you just have true love of the other person. You just love the uniqueness. You appreciate the uniqueness of the other person. You don't care what you get. That's called true love. That's sometimes people can love the love others, the relatives, even after they died. In other words, there's nothing, you're not going to get anything out of it. It's just you love the goodness of the other person. You're willing to do anything for them. Right? After a person has died, of course, you can't do anything. But some people do. They say, well, my mother, she wouldn't have, my of blessed memory, she wouldn't like it if I was a drug addict. She wouldn't like it if I was a gambler. I'm going to stop. My mother always wanted me to be a lawyer. Now I'm going to do it for her sake, for her sake. In other words, that's an example of true love. You go against your will to do what the beloved wants. Says that's true love. That's called loving God. Also, the same thing. To do what God wants, even though it's against your will, it's against your nature, against your habit, against your sense, against your common sense. What possible difference does it make if I eat milk and meat together? What God really cares about this? He says, yes, he really cares. Yes, he really cares. This is a way to come closer. This is love. It says, that's what it means. That's what it means, that your seed, your offspring, and your name will be forever. It says in one of the Navi, in the prophet, Zarachem, hu b'chinas or zarua. This is what's called the light, which is planted. Because you change yourself, you're willing to plant yourself in the ground, humility, and be like a servant to God. It says, therefore, this was what's called that your egotism falls away, the false shell. And this gives a seed, ashreichem zarai, that you have planted your plants. B'shimchem, that's the level of Yas David Shem, Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim. This making God a name means that whatever you do is only what God wants you to do. That's King David. He made God a name. Shubachin is a bittul. In other words, when you look at this person, all you see, this is a Jew. Bittul, this is a true human being. He does only what's right, thinks what's right, says what's right. This is bittul rekiva sagarin. This is what's called the dissolving of the seed. Sha'al yadeza, by means of this, by means of dissolving your egotism, your shell, your heart of stone. Yochal liot tzmicha. Only by this can there be growth. So that's what Judaism really depends on. That's the Shma Yisroel. This is coming to what we said. Remember, we said the lower water and the upper water. By means of this, Yisrael, the Jewish people are called Tamasi. They're called my twin. God says, Pitchili, Achoti, Rayoti, Yonati, Taimoti. Says he calls God my twin. I'm sorry, God calls the Jewish people his twin, Taimoti, my twin. But it doesn't mean a twin. Says that the Jewish people, they can make God revealed here just like above. Just like in the heavens, all the angels are going crazy for God. They feel the truth, the reality, the love of God. Is also, it'll be the same thing in the world. That's what it says in the future. That a wellspring will come out from the house of God, and it'll water the river of craziness. That's the lower waters. These lower waters, which is the waters of stupidness, craziness, that people really act as though that there's no creator. That's how we come to this level of, through what's called the yoke of heaven. By us accepting this yoke of heaven, it reveals God down here like it is above. Because if you serve God according to your heart and whatever you love, so it still is a little bit personal. You dig out this well of living water. In other words, the upper waters, which we said are the pleasures of true life, are revealed here in this physical world. That's why people used to go to the Holy Temple and come out happy 3 times a year. Al Yadei Avram Derech Eretz. How do the waters become living? Living waters, that they're in the ground and they push up through the ground. That makes them what's called living waters. Like it says in Parshas Chukos, Alei Be'er, by means of this is drawn down, by means of this, there comes a wellspring from the essence of God. So that's what it means. See, I have put in front of you the true life. That's what the true life is, this life from what's called above the rakia, above the firmament. That was how we started the mimer in the beginning. How can people really come to love God? You have to loving God depends on feeling the truth. And you can't feel the truth all the time you're feeling yourself. So the Rebbe says, that's why the Torah was given. Now we know what to do. We can do it. And by means of doing what we should and refraining from what we shouldn't, is this opens up the door to this love, this upper love, and to the upper waters, pleasure in Hashem. So in other words, what the Rebbe is saying is that we should do whatever God says. God says you're supposed to get married. You're supposed to eat a nice meal on Shabbat. You're supposed to dress well. You have to make the you're supposed to, the name of God is supposed to be loved by you. You're supposed to do things in a pleasant way. And you're supposed to be in the world, right? It's not that you're supposed to sit on a mountain, but that's the whole trick, is to be in the world, but to use the world into yourself and to react to the world and to interpret the world only the way that God wants. And this requires that a person has to sort of put himself aside. That's called Kabbalatol. And by means of this, he comes to the upper waters. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And we'll start a new mimer here, God willing, tomorrow. Hopefully we'll also finish it tomorrow. Have a good, no. So now we are going to learn the Devar Malchus. Excuse me. The Devar Malchut of the week. We're Nachamu. Let's go. 1 minute.